Welcome to Founders Fridays, a series that brings you more insights on the founders' journeys from their own perspective. On today's episode, we are joined by Dan Holowack, co-founder and CEO at CrowdRiff. Today, we'll be learning more about Dan's founder journey, focusing on the entire story, lessons learned, and more on what it's like to work at CrowdRiff. CrowdRiff has a long history, so we will be taking the highlights of their 8-year journey. We'll touch on the story behind the start of CrowdRiff, how the company's evolved over time, the future of travel, user-generated content, and the culture of the company. Thanks for joining me, Dan. Please come on up.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what CrowdRiff does?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I'm an entrepreneur and co-founder and also a new father of our new 6-month-old little boy, which has been just an amazing addition to the journey. And CrowdRiff, so CrowdRiff is built to help travel brands tell more authentic and compelling stories to reach consumers and really inspire travel. And the way that we do that is we help them harness the really authentic content that's being produced by regular people. So people like you and me that are either on our vacation, capturing really candid moments, or people that are living locally in these destinations and sharing the things that they like to do as locals in these communities and neighborhoods that help give you insight into the experiences that you can have in a city that you want to visit. And that was really like the early thesis of CrowdRiff was it was really simple, that people make these decisions to go traveling and it's really precious. It costs money. Maybe it's your only 2 weeks of vacation you have every year. And you don't, what doesn't work anymore is that like one perfect beach photo or that fully staged photo shoot that somebody did 3 years ago with a bunch of actors. We all know consumers want that authentic picture. That's what gives them confidence. And so that's what we bring to the market with our content platform.
Well, I love what you do because I'm one of those people that will look at way too many pictures because I then have to convince my wife that we should not be visiting my in-laws in Spain. I know no one's going to cry for me for going to Spain, but I have to make a pretty compelling argument to go somewhere else. So you're definitely, I'm your target end user. So why don't we go even further back? Tell me about your background. What did you do before? How did you get started?
I'll share a story from like really early on. I mean, at my heart, I'm a builder. I imagine a lot of founders are. I spent my whole life, building things, came up through engineering at University of Waterloo. And then I guess like a lot of maybe engineering students back then, got my start at, Research in Motion, now BlackBerry. But I had this very interesting role where I actually worked in the people and operations team. And my job was to build out internal systems to help people be more effective at what they were doing. And I got to basically build out these internal tools that would connect different data across the company and help people accomplish what they were trying to do in new ways. And so that really sparked something within me, I think, because I would have the ability to sit down and code something. I could build it in a couple of weeks, and then I would go and show it to somebody, and I'd see them use it and see the joy it brought them, that I'd saved them like, a full day a week of time just because of the tool that I'd built. Or you'd be walking around and I'd meet somebody who was like, holding a ruler to their screen to try and compare things or something like that. And so I think it's just been always something within me that I just love building things and I love helping people solve problems. And I get such a kick out of seeing the joy that brings them and the impact that it can have. And then I just continued really down the route of data and visualization. So I was enamored by the amount of data being shared on social media. This was back in like the heyday of Twitter. Instagram hadn't even quite started yet. And we were living this world where like people were sharing their opinions all day, every day. And I just thought, what a data set. If I could only harness, parts of this data to help people make better decisions, that would be amazing. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it kind of all started from, in my kind of decision to strike out as an entrepreneur. As a company, like as CrowdRiff, we work in this industry where most of our customers are destination marketers. And it's an industry I didn't even know about when I struck out as an entrepreneur. And I think that there's a lot of, in a way, founders are also trained to tell these really catchy stories about how, boom, we were successful. Look at that. And it's perpetuated by the media. But, it was like 3 years of learning everything the hard way, making no money, and iterating, piece by piece, from the product to the market, back to the product, back to the market. And maybe one story I'll share is that I was invited to give a presentation down in El Paso, Texas. And this was a real turning point because they wanted me to come down and talk about digital innovation and in marketing. And I think they just wanted this industry to see more of what's happening in new marketing innovations. So I came down to speak, and I spent the next 3 days with all of these folks that were attending the conference. And I just really fell in love with who they are and what they do. And I learned that these are all destination marketers, and they have these jobs where every day they have to figure out how to market the hundreds or thousands of things to see and do in a particular city, state, or country. And then I thought, I think there's a match here. I think there's a match between our ability to harness and catalog and index the photos and videos being shared by travelers, and the challenges that these people face every day in figuring out how to market across geographies, across seasons, across experiences, and diverse sort of different traveler personas. But yeah, it's funny to think back that our largest customer base is something that only I learned about 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah, and so how far into the company did you learn about these destination marketers?
I'd say before CrowdRiff looked like it was today was probably 2 to 3 years of. Prior to that, I was working in the social media data and analytics space. So building out what in that day might have looked more like, if you remember all the way back then to like Clout and Radiance Mix and those early kind of companies in the social media analytics space. That place kind of blew up. A few companies got acquired and moved on. But so there was a couple of years of figuring that out. And I mean, being out of the co-op program at University of Waterloo, I still had a lot to learn. And so I tried a lot of things. I tried, you set up the credit card form and say, it's $10 a month, fill out your credit card. And then you learn how difficult it is to build a business that way. And then you go enterprise and you do $200,000, $300,000 annual contracts. And you learn how difficult it is to build a business where 1 or 2 customers can basically dictate your future, dictate your roadmap, dictate your product, dictate your your churn ratios. And where we landed was in the sweet spot, which I didn't know at the time. But then, based on what we tried, realized that now we're in an industry that is, they're investing anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a year up front to have a product that they're going to use every day. So you've got the engagement, you get the retention, you get the upfront capital from your customers. And then we had done so much before then that you're like, okay, this feels right. We can build a company. You can make payroll. People can pay rent. They can buy groceries, we can build this. So
I love that story, how you tried consumers, then you tried enterprises, then you found destination marketers. And just to really emphasize for people that are listening to this and are not part of the travel industry, the way I look at destination marketers, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is they're almost a CMO for a destination, and their job is to get interest in visitors. So there's like someone that's responsible for Canada, there's someone that's responsible for Ontario, and there's probably someone responsible for Toronto. And his or her job is to market that destination.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They are the CMO of a destination. They come up with the overarching brand. Who are we? And they really have to think about, what do we stand for? What do the local people stand for? What are the values of the city? What are the main attributes that we have on the market to attract a traveler, and figure out how to really package that. Because there's a lot of noise in the travel space. You've got like all these major booking platforms, tour operators. They're all just trying to get their slice of the pie. But the destination marketer, like that CMO of the city, has to be thinking big picture about, how are we positioning ourselves in the market? What story are we telling?
And the reason they love you is, I guess, you're getting authentic, original pictures that can help bring their destination to life.
Yes. Yeah. I think there was like this moment, kind of the eureka moment of like product market fit, when I'm thinking back, is like, we were bringing in like hundreds of millions of photos and videos off of social networks through those feeds. And then we put that into a huge search engine that we'd built. And so these destination marketers could sit down in front of a display and they could type in family hiking at sunset with their dog and get hundreds of photos and videos of families hiking at sunset on the west coast of British Columbia. It was impossible to do that, prior to us building that system. And so instead of having these really scripted photo shoots, like you would end up just discovering this video of a father going on the hike with his daughter in the backpack. They're hiking along and he turns back and they high five along the trail. And like, there's these moments that you just cannot script.
Wow.
And so when you put that into marketing, that's of course what resonates with people like you and me.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know how powerful that was. Unfortunately, none of my pictures will make those special moments because I'm not a good photographer.
They might. They might.
They might. Would love to know a bit more about your evolution. Like you've raised capital a couple times. You built a company, and I know it's not the best way to look at a company's trajectory, but I'd love to hear give us sort of touch points. You raised, a seed. Like what was the company then? How many years in? What tell us a bit about the impact on where the company was and is.
Yeah, of course.
The seed round.
Yeah. So my co-founder Abby and I, we really wanted to. We probably could have raised earlier. I know a lot of founders raise really early on, but we really wanted to have something. We wanted to have something super tangible. I think we were really committed to bootstrapping to a certain point where we knew we had product market fit. We had a good set of customers and recurring revenue. So we bootstrapped to our first $1 million in ARR. That was like our first 12 to 15 people. But then I think every founder has a choice you have to make at that moment. Okay, great. We bootstrapped to $1 million in revenue. Fantastic. Exciting milestone. But then do you just keep eking along, make just enough money to hire one more person and just do one more thing? And then, or, we had this really big vision for what CrowdRiff could become. And we're in this fast-paced environment, like marketing meets technology meets travel. And so working with some experienced investors, bringing on some really great advisors, it seemed to make sense. So that's how we approached the seed round. Was we already had something of real substance. However, that did not make fundraising easy. I think a lot of people think that like founders have this kind of born skill to fundraise. Like it's just, well, they must do it. It's the CEO's job. The founder can just do it. They just fundraise. The money appears, and it's easy. Like it's a learned skill, like anything else. It took me 9 months to raise our seed round, and future fundraisings were shorter. But I learned a lot in that period of time. I went from sort of using all those cookie cutter decks that you hear about, from like who's your team, your competition, what's your traction, etc.
These are only 15 slides you need, then you'll magically raise.
That is not the full answer. I think what I learned over those months was you just tell a great story. And so I ended up changing my positioning to the first slide of my seed deck ended up becoming searching for photos sucks. And it was a big decision to say, like, I'm going to put the word sucks on the first page of a slide deck that's going to be seen by all of these highly educated, powerful people. But it got the message across. And then by the end of those 9 months, we were originally raising $1 million. We had to double it to 2 million because of the interest. And then I had to say no to a number of investors that wanted in at the end of that. And so it was quite a journey of a learning experience for me, raising that seed round from start to end.
So I love that. It probably helped crystallize how you tell a story to all stakeholders, because it's, you said, it's convincing people to back you with capital, but any employee or any customer is the same thing. So you raised 2 million, and what changed? Like, did you go faster? Did you build a team? How,
Yeah, that 2 million was really to help us double down on what was already working. Because we'd bootstrapped to the first $1 million, that fundraise meant that we can, instead of just growing the team by one person every couple of months, you can be a little bit more bold with your hiring, and we can be more bold with the marketing channels and go to market stuff that was already working. We could really, for us early on, events was a really great channel. Like our market really liked to operate in person. So we could fly to more places, we could sponsor more events. We were there, we were visible and relevant. And so that was really what, like, yeah, that helped the company grow, doubling down on that. And then the Series A was, that was around 2018. So I guess
Yeah.
a little more than 2 years from our seed. And that round was really to help us drive more expansion with our growth. So, and that was a round where we brought in a new lead investor who was Leaders Fund, and they're a firm based in Toronto.
Yeah, not well known, but they're really good.
And I agree. And they, I wasn't really out fundraising very aggressively. Leaders Fund took a genuine interest in us, and I'd been chatting with them over several months. And one of the really funny anecdotes there was one of their partners ended up encountering this person in a dog park. I know this sounds like a strange story, but this person ends up being a marketer of a big travel brand, and he ends up talking to her about CrowdRiff and what we do. So as I'm having these regular calls with him catching up, he's telling me about his conversations with this person in the dog park. And I'm thinking to myself, a founder just wants to know, you want to know that you can trust, your investors, you understand their intentions, and that they're really going to be supportive of the business and believe in the trajectory. And I thought, if this guy's talking about us, he hasn't even invested yet, but if he's talking about us at the dog park with people he's meeting, and we did close that deal subsequently, we did end up winning that deal. Then this is the kind of person that I can see myself working with. And so they approached us with really competitive and fair terms, and we brought them on as our Series A lead, so that we could keep expanding into new markets beyond destination marketing, into hotels and resorts and large attractions.
So yeah, you basically, as the investor would say, you increase the TAM, the total addressable market. So went from destination marketers to now a hotel. So they're not showing you just, I guess, the perfect picture of their pool.
Yeah,
now you get authentic pictures.
Yeah, I know. I still think that there is so much innovation needed in the hotel space, because most of us are still flipping through photos of people are still promoting photos of beds and rooms, and it's like, we all know what a room looks like. Like, help me understand the experience I'm going to have at that hotel differently.
Yeah, I think there's only downside with those pictures. That's what your king size bed looks like. Ooh. Otherwise, it's pretty standard. So it seems like that was the last round of financing, at least publicly disclosed. So I imagine, despite COVID, things must be going pretty well.
So there actually was another round, which sort of in thinking through kind of the conversation today, I guess we didn't put out publicly, but we raised sort of this, like, what we call the Series A1, I guess, in 2019. And the way that came about was we had uncovered this big opportunity with something new happening with Google called web stories. Basically, Google was creating a new way to surface content in the first page of Google search results with what looks and feels like an Instagram story, but it lives on the web. Because, of course, Google wants you spending more time on Google, and they see that most consumers are engaging with vertical content. And so my co-founder and I actually flew to Tokyo for the first event Google held. We were the first to bring a product to market for the travel industry. And that was showing really promising growth. And so in that case, our investors approached me with interest in putting in more capital. And after reviewing the terms, I thought they were fair. I thought we maybe get something slightly better if we'd gone out to raise by another lead, but maybe not significantly. These investors, you work really well with them. And so I guess the typical advice is, if you're getting offered money from people you trust and are helpful to the business on good terms, you take the money. So we did. So we took on another $5 million in this kind of A1 in 2019.
Excellent.
And then I'm glad we did, right? Because you never know, because then COVID hits, right?
Yeah.
6 or 7 months later, and you're very grateful to have that additional capital behind you.
And I imagine COVID had some not well understood impacts on the travel industry, because as I think people now are traveling for longer term, or at least in the States. Canada, we were all locked down.
Yeah.
So two questions around COVID. Have you seen a rebound generally, and what has changed about the travel industry post-COVID?
Yes, we've absolutely seen a rebound. We have. I think that when something's taken away from you for so long, and we're all told you may not travel, you're not allowed, it just makes you want it more. And so people, of course, throughout COVID were finding ways to travel. They were doing more road trips. They were exploring the outdoors more. And now it's like a slingshot how quickly things are coming back. And I think that we're seeing numbers go beyond, the pre-COVID numbers, and just how much people are traveling. And that's driven by a number of factors. Like one is missing out on travel, of course, the need to reconnect with friends, family, and have more adventures. And then the flexibility of remote work is just creating these opportunities to blend business travel and personal travel, to work from anywhere. At the same time, it's creating new stresses on destinations and new stresses on local communities. So you have, first of all, the love of the outdoors is great. I'm glad that more people love the outdoors. I think we need to really recognize and cherish, our environment and those outdoor opportunities that we have. But a lot of these communities were not prepared for the influx of traveler interest in those areas. And then they weren't prepared for all the people that are descending on these small towns to work remotely in those small towns as well. So there's a lot of positives that come from it, but really part of the role of a destination, and why I love being partners with them, is it's part of their job to look ahead and think about, how do we develop our destination in a way that's more sustainable?
Interesting.
And influence through marketing, influence how people see us and where they decide to, spend time in our destination, what they decide to do, so that it actually has a positive impact on the community and the environment. Because you're in this constant battle of basically preparing your facilities and your economy and your infrastructure to keep up with whatever the next runaway TikTok post is about some waterfall somewhere. And then everybody's like, oh, crap.
Interesting. So maybe you mentioned TikTok. What are the big, you've been in this for 8 years. What are the big changes in social and travel over the last 8 years?
Well, there's of course been a change in, I think the speed of content creation is one of them. And of course the format. So where it started was, of course, Instagram, you'd get photos from your friends about what they're doing. You'd follow your friends, you'd get information from your friends. Of course, TikTok totally turned that on its head and said, we're going to build this interest graph. And it's not going to be about your friends much at all. It's just going to be about what's popular and interesting to keep you looking at this platform. And then we moved to short form video. Short form video now is just a monster, from Instagram Reels to TikTok to YouTube Shorts. I think YouTube Shorts is going to really give TikTok a run also. Just all the short form video. And then you also have a further shift into the creator economy that's happening on social media. So the amount of influence that these individuals have. When CrowdRiff was starting, it was really, the benefit was really in the variety of the photos and videos that are being shared. And now it's that, plus it's the individuals, the ability to work with a lot of these up and coming creators, which we've started doing as a company. We launched a creator brand called Localhood. We're working directly with local creators in these cities, and they're using our app to produce short form video about all the amazing experiences to see and do in that place. So that's been a big addition to our business, and harnessing this trend with social media, and not just bringing in the user generated content from these channels, but now we have a mobile app in the hands of creators, and they're producing original content for us as well.
Interesting. So you've gone from crowdsourcing to picking specific influencers, or I guess you do both now, but that can create content.
Yeah, but they don't like to call themselves influencers. They like to be, creators. Yeah.
Creators. Let's call them creators.
But we do both.
I'm dating myself a bit with the nomenclature I'm using. So social's changed, travel's changed a bit post-COVID. If you were to make predictions about the future, what what do you think continue to be, if we sit down in 5 years or 10 years, what's going to be different?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of challenge ahead for the travel industry. I think there was a lot of lessons learned throughout COVID about the impact that travel has, a positive impact on the economy, but also the impact that too many travelers in one place has, on these communities who, it was kind of a breath of fresh air for them not to have kind of being clamored with tourists all the time. So I see a future where our partners are playing an even more crucial role, actually. So how these destination marketers kind of sit at the intersection of all of this and need to really think critically about how do we build out a future for tourism that's more sustainable. So I really want to see a future where there's more balance in tourism demand across different destinations. I want to see a future where the dollars that we're spending are going into that local community, less to sort of big international corporations. But I hope that we become more conscious travelers in where we're staying and how we're spending our money. We take time to interface with local people in those communities to build empathy. That's what I'm really hoping for. From a social media standpoint, I think we are headed for a future where more and more keep shifting to the power of the creator and the individual to tell these stories. It's certainly a broader trend in marketing, but I think it's absolutely huge in travel because no brand can be everywhere. You can't be on every hike, every road trip. And so all of these great YouTubers and creators that are going to these destinations, I think are going to keep having an outsized influence on how you and I make our travel decisions. And I feel like we're at a really good spot sitting between all of that right now.
It's interesting. I tend to agree with you in that, in the past, 10 years ago, it'd be like, let's go to Madrid and explore Madrid. But now I think as we see more perspectives out there, it's like, where else can I go in this region? What's off the beaten track? So, and so that's interesting to see that it'll continue. Talked a bit about travel, talked a bit about your past. Let's talk about a bit more about the culture.
Sure.
Why don't you share a bit about what it's like to work at CrowdRiff?
Yeah, of course. It's really an experience like nothing else. The team's super passionate. They are super dedicated. We're all committed to bringing about this positive future for one of the world's largest industries. And when people ask us, when they're interviewing at CrowdRiff and whatnot, it's really caused my co-founder and I to reflect back. And as we were crossing 50 or 60 people at CrowdRiff, people would ask us, what did you do to create this culture? Right? I think founders get asked this question, how did you make this culture? And they expect you to have some kind of master plan, oh, I did these 6 things, and then we had a great culture, and that was it. But I don't know. I think as founders, you first is survival. You're just trying to survive and build a company at first. But I think what has to be at the core too is just being super grateful. So I still remember the first time I did payroll, and I would click the button to run payroll, and employees would get paid, and I knew they were using that money to pay rent, to buy groceries. And I was like, we're 4 people. These people have decided to join me on this crazy vision. And I just felt super, super grateful. And so I've always wanted to just build out a culture that reflects, just I don't know, feeling grateful for the fact that all these amazing people are kind of joining us on this ride. And Abby and I, looking back, felt like the core things that started was hire people that don't have an ego and hire people that are kind. And, bringing people together that don't have much ego and are really kind gets you a really long way. And then, of course, we sort of we more cemented those, and anchored those behaviors into a series of values and whatnot. But I think at the beginning, that was how it all started.
I was going to ask, so what values or how would you describe the culture today based off what's emerged?
Part of the culture is just embracing what makes every person unique. One of my favorite lines is "bring your whole self." As we grew, we hired from lots of different places. We hired from lots of different coding boot camps and lots of different programs. And we've just been super fortunate to now arrive, with a company of people with unique, diverse backgrounds, 49% female, 45% male, 6% non-binary. I love just the diversity of our people, the quirks, like what makes everybody kind of unique. That's been really big. Another thing that has been a cornerstone for us is this idea of don't settle. It really speaks to our curiosity, to our drive to innovate. Um, Growing up, I actually had this thing in my bedroom, and it said, "I love things that seem impossible." That might sound crazy, but things that are
It sounds
hard
like a
are
founder.
really,
That's what it sounds like.
yeah, yeah. Things that are hard are really interesting, and we don't shy away from that. We adopt some of the most cutting edge technology as it's being made available. We're always trying new things. We always get curious and like look around the next corner, and have really ingrained that in who we are as we continue to grow. And then you just have to make sure you listen, right? That you listen to people, because as the company grows, I no longer see everything that's happening at every level of the company. Even at 100 people, you're not in touch at the same level as when you were 10. And so then you just have to build this trust into the company where people can speak up. They can share their mind. They can give feedback. They can tell you like, "Hey, Dan, I don't think this makes sense. Hey, this isn't working. Here's an idea I have. Hey, Dan, I've been thinking about this differently. And what if we tried that?" Because if we can harness like all those ideas and pieces of feedback at every level of the company, I firmly believe that you can just keep steering the company in a really great direction for the future.
So I love this. And if someone listening to this loves what they're hearing, they're interested about the travel space, are you guys looking to hire? How can they find out more about open positions?
We're hiring for, I think, 8 or 9 roles right now. So you can find out more about our positions right from crowdriff.com. And some of the unique things that you could look forward to, in addition to what I mentioned, is really, a lot of us do, of course, love travel. And so in addition to all the kind of competitive benefits you'd expect from a growing startup, we've really leaned into the travel space with some unique things. Like we have like this 90-day global Globetrotter program.
Excellent.
And every Monday as part of our all hands, we start with a story from a team member, and they share one of their CrowdRiff trips or one of their 90-day Globetrotter programs. And last Monday, one of our PMs shared how her and her dog had spent 90 days in Europe traveling in different countries while working remotely for CrowdRiff as part of this program. And if you don't have time to plan a trip, we offer you a CrowdRiff travel concierge, a professional travel planner that's traveled the world several times to help you plan out the perfect trip for you. And so everything that we do is just about like really making sure that like you're getting the most from the experience at CrowdRiff, and that we are helping you grow, not just in your career, but in the path that you're taking, in your life, and making sure that that's possible.
Is the CrowdRiff concierge available to non-CrowdRiffers?
No, no, it is not. You got to become a CrowdRiffer to get access. Elizabeth is the best. Is the best.
Because I could definitely use a concierge for my next trip. It sounds exciting. I really appreciate the time you spent with us. What we'll do is after we release this podcast, if anyone has additional questions, we'll follow up with you and maybe do answer any questions from the audience.
Sure.
Thanks so much for your time, Dan.
Yeah,
cool.
You too.
And if you're listening to this podcast, follow us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast to get content like this right in your inbox. Subscribe to our newsletter at techto.org/newsletter and be the first to get all the news, trends, and stories as they happen. Thank you and have an amazing Friday.